the fact of the matter is, and you kind of alluded to it, there are many different health systems out there, and there are a lot of sincere people, and it's not all wrong and it's not all bad. As a matter of fact, all of these systems, nobody dreamed of these systems. Nobody created anything. God created them all.
With Dr. Jim, who has, I think, over 40 years of experience in natural medicine. I think I'm correct in that, Dr. Jim. So we just have a conversation talking about different things, different topics, so that people who maybe aren't so aware of original can just have a good starting point where, if it is of interest to you as you watch these videos, that you've got a kind of a basic term of reference to which you can do further research, further exploration, to see if natural medicine and original medicine is something that you can implement in your life. So what we're doing today is continuing with the series we've been doing for the last few videos, which is the philosophy of original medicine. What's the thinking behind original medicine? What's that philosophy? What's that idea system, if I can use that term? That all of the protocols, and if you look around our YouTube channel, that you'll hear Dr. Jim and others speaking about. So we wanted to continue with part 2 of Dr. Jimisms, just looking at the very humorous way that Dr. Jim brings out the principles of original medicine. So Dr. Jim, thank you for taking the time to be with us again today. I'll start with the first Jimism that we'll cover today, which is, I've heard you say it on many of our community calls. You've talked about the CDC, WHO, FIH, and then you say, but there's another 3-letter acronym that people are missing out on when it comes to health that is the critical one. Maybe you could tell us a bit more about what that is and what you mean by that.
Yes, and thank you so much for that question. And it's very important. Yeah, the ACA, the NIH, there's just all these 3-letter acronyms. And these are important agencies. They do have a role to play. But the problem is, and what I'm always listening for, is another 3 letters that really is the foundational basis for all knowledge and wisdom. And that's the GOD. And if it's not consistent with the Bible, if it's not consistent with the principles, concepts and principles laid out in the Bible, then you got to kind of question the veracity, the standard of excellence. And I guess the underlying thing that I'm talking about when I talk about these 3-letter initials, a lot of times, there's a lot more economics and politics involved in what they're saying than there is science. So everybody want to look at them as the gurus, all this background in science, but they're going back and forth between these 3-letter initials and their companies that they're representing, et cetera. And so the standard of excellence that we should always look to is what they're saying. And of course, the Bible doesn't talk about specific things, but it does set certain foundational principles, and it sets the standard by which all of these different agencies, all these experts should be amenable to. And so that's what I'm referring to. And it's not to disparage them, but people want to speak to all. What are these 3-letter organizations saying? And I think what's important is that we realize that the one that's really in charge, the one who owns all of the science, all of the technology, everything that we have is created by God. It's for our use, and we can't change and we can't manipulate what he has and expect to not pay the price for that. So that's what I'm talking about. All of these, it's not to disparage them, but to make sure that the standard are the 3 initials, the GOD. So thank you so much for asking me that question and helping me to kind of explain. A lot of people think that I'm disparaging these organizations. No, I'm just saying that, you need a standard. And how do you determine what they're saying is right, wrong, or indifferent? And that's the standard I think that is in the best of our interest to follow. What he says is time honored and irrefutable. Everything else, is open to question and debate.
It's funny, Jim. I think when we look at the world around us and we're very tempted. You mentioned science and going between all these three-letter
Yes.
organizations, and we can often get caught in the weight and the seriousness of it. And they are serious matters. We're talking about life and death. But I really do appreciate you through the lens of humor. You bring out these things, but actually there's a very real, deep message to what you're bringing out in a humorous way, and we think about it slightly differently. So I don't think, without speaking for the people that will watch this video, I don't think that we will begrudge you bringing that to us with humor, because we think about it differently when it doesn't come through those heavy centers of the brain. We just look at it a bit more creatively. So no, we really do appreciate it, Jim, and I know we have a whole community that really does appreciate the way you bring these topics to the forefront of our minds. So you mentioned that kind of the God, the God angle when it comes to health, original medicine, and healing. There's a proverb, there's a text in the Bible that said, there's a way that seems right unto a man. Maybe you could just expand on that a bit more, weaving it in with your previous answer, because I think they're quite close, and they're things that you do frequently mention. Perhaps you can explain for the benefit of those who haven't watched your other videos, and if you haven't, go and watch them. But to really explain, what do you mean when you repeat that text, Proverbs 14, verse 12? What's going on behind it? What's the thinking behind it?
Yes, and that's the first cousin to the previous question. And it kind of helps me to kind of expand on it from the standpoint, there are a lot of things that does seem reasonable. It seems coherent, and the Bible is so clear. What I like about that particular one that you picked out, there are many things that seem right to a man, but in the end leads to destruction and death. As you said, it's in Proverbs 14:12. But there's another principle in the Bible. You don't want to take text out of context and make a whole principle out of it. There's another one that's kind of related. It says you want two witnesses in order to determine whether or not something is right or wrong, etc. And that one is so important that the exact same words are in Proverbs 16:25. So not only do you have the proverb once, but then you have it saying it again. So this is probably a very important thing if you're using the exact same words, saying there are many things that seem right to a man, but in the end leads to destruction and death. And that goes back to the former thing that we're saying is, there are a lot of people out there that are very well-meaning, but not necessarily well-informed from a biblical standpoint. So, and it leads to another, what you call the Dr. Jimisms, there are a lot, another thing here is, this person's very sincere about it. And so I said, yeah, they're very sincere, but they're sincerely wrong. So all these adjectives are nice, but again, you need to apply that standard, that biblical standard, that time-honored, irrefutable standard to all of the thinking that's on there. So you're right. That is one of my favorite texts in the Bible. And again, it's so important that it's mentioned twice. So you have two witnesses. So it even follows that principle as well, if you will.
And I think it's one that we can, there are many healing systems.
Yes.
I can use that terminology that encompasses
Yes.
all that we know in modern society about health, about healing, about medicine, about recovering from ailments, etc. But it seems to me what you're saying, Dr. Jim, is that if you take and you divorce the spiritual and the God out of
Yes.
that from the perspective of original medicine. What original medicine is saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you take God out of the original medicine, you've
Yes.
taken everything out of it, even if you have the protocols left. Is that a fair statement? Because I know there may be many people that are watching these videos that aren't necessarily Christian, then may not be spiritual. They're more interested in the healing side of the kind of the protocols they can do at a very functional level of life. But what would you say, to that, when you kind of, that's my understanding of original medicine anyway. Perhaps you
Yes.
can enlighten and
Yes,
clear it
and
up.
I like that. I like that so much, because there are some people, another one of my questions, some people are so heavenly minded, they are no earthly good, and they want to be challenging everybody, and everybody's a fool except Christians. The fact of the matter is, and you kind of alluded to it, there are many different health systems out there, and there are a lot of sincere people, and it's not all wrong, and it's not all bad. As a matter of fact, all of these systems, nobody dreamed of these systems. Nobody created anything. God created them all, and it's the misuse of systems. So another very closely aligned thing is that especially when it comes to original medicine, see, original medicine is going back to the original plan. It's going to that foundational basis, and it's the standard. So another one of the things that I like to share with people from my favorite author outside of the Bible, there's many ways of practicing the healing arts. There's only one that heaven approves. And so when you hear me talking about original medicine, that is the heavenly approved foundational standard. And so people say, well, what do you think of iridology? What do you think of yoga? What do you think of homeopathy? What do you think about all of these different knowledge-based health systems? And my answer is, all of them have something in there that's so valuable. So just to say blanket that person is bad and wicked and unbuilt. No, anything in those systems that are consistent with original medicine, I support. In my book, Concepts of Original Medicine, I tell people, if you want to know what I believe about all these systems, read my Concepts of Original Medicine. So it really lays out that standard. And I basically say any system that is consistent with these principles, those parts of it I agree with. As soon as they get around the edges and go outside of it, I don't agree with it. But I'm not going to go out there blanketly and saying all these other health systems and all these other health professionals are bad and wicked and of the devil and all of, we have to love and appreciate the dignity of everybody. So even when they're wrong, you can still love the person without loving the system or the things that they adhere to, their philosophies, etc. So that's what I mean when I say that. Let's understand what the standard is, and then take what those things in those other systems that are consistent with that standard, and those things that aren't. I recommend that you leave it alone. And so that's the point I'm trying to make. There are many ways, which you kind of said, there are many ways of practicing the healing arts, but there is a standard, there is a foundational standard by which they all should be measured. And that's what I am offering. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about original medicine. And if you agree with those concepts and principles, and then I say, so we have an educational system that, and the other part of this is, there's books that say, well, this isn't consistent. That there is no perfect book out there. People even disagree on what the Bible says, and that is the perfect standard. There is no perfect book. I don't claim to have all the answers, even in the 3 books that I wrote. And so even in the books that I wrote, the things that are consistent with original medicine, I ask you to adhere to. And those others, yeah, let's talk about it this and that. But let's not major on minors. Let's not create a whole doctoral thesis out of this one sentence or these 2 different things in this book of 450 pages that don't seem to fit. Nobody is perfect. None of the angels. The only perfect rendition is God. And even when he tried to communicate it with his faithful servants, sometimes we wrote it wrong. Sometimes it's not specified right, but the principles are still there. If you understand the principles, and you know, you can take anything out of the Bible out of context and support anything you want. So when I talk about that original medicine being the standard, don't take my book and take it apart and analyze every sentence. Look at the principles that I'm laying out. And this is a good way for me to kind of, again, applaud you for the two original questions that you asked, because once you have the standard, once you have the principles, and then you go from there. And let's not debate and get all bogged down with where the comma is and this, that, and the other thing. God is in charge. He is the creator of all things. Without him, we can do nothing. And you know what's so powerful about this? Even in the things that I teach, and I say, here's the laws, and I don't see how you can violate these laws and get this kind of outcome. One of the things that I learned, that even with these laws, the only one who can change those laws is the creator of those laws. He can overrule them. So, you know, you don't see many cases, but, you know, one of the things I said, you know, the law of gravity. I don't care how much you pray, how much you believe it. If you jump off of a 10-story roof, you're going to hurt yourself when you're violating that law. But you know what? God can overrule that law. Now, he doesn't. He can, and he has done it. If you understand the Bible and you really, there are times when he has transcended and overruled laws. Well, I'll give you an example. Lazarus came back from the dead. So when you die, people can't bring you back, but God can bring you back. So he can the only one who can, I guess the way I say, the only one who can overrule his laws, the only ones who can overrule original medicine is God, not any other health system. So that's a good way, perhaps, of me summing up all of those previous questions about all these other 3-letter issues, and doing things that kind of seem right, kind of what is called a specious argument, seemingly reasonable and plausible. So all these things, that is the foundational standard. You trust in him, and the only ones, not man, the only one that can overrule God's laws is God himself. And when we try to say that we can do this, that, and the other things, and I like the Dr. Jimisms that you talk, all these other things about using poisons to heal you, that's not original medicine. Can it work? I say when it seems to work, seems right to a man, it's because unwittingly you have tapped into a system that was able to overrule the foolishness of men. You see what I'm saying? So the one, and I've learned that so you can actually do something that is even, quote, bad, but the powerful God that we have put systems in our body that aren't even well defined, that takes that. It's almost like martial arts. It takes that thing that you have and it turns it against you and use it against you. So the more you understand and appreciate original medicine, the more humble you get, and the more you appreciate all these different systems and all the different sincere people, even when they're sincerely wrong. You accept the good that they're trying to convey, but you let them go this far. And then original medicine, but we said, when you're going into this area, you're going into a very shaky area. Is it 100% right? No, because like I said, even in spite of them, even in spite of the fact that they're wrong, God looks at their sincere hearts. And in that space, he can help them to help those that are still God's children that they are trying to help. And you know, as you can see, I have a lot of gray hairs on my head. I've learned this from a lot of study and a lot of experience. And that's why I kind of get a little bit uncomfortable when I see people self-righteously just downplaying everything that's not, quote, their standard of Christianity. And so it's not about Christian versus not Christian. It's about God versus the three letters, the God versus any of the other three initials, three letter kind of acronyms or organizations or health systems that are out there. And I think that kind of summarizes my position, my view of that. Does that make sense at all, or am I just confusing the situation even further?
No, Jim, I think you're really explaining, philosophy often when looking at ideas, it's not often a very simple thing.
Correct.
We can try and explain them in the simplest terms, but when you start to unpack that, you start getting into the richness of the complexity and the real depth of the idea. So I hope that people who are watching this video are getting a sense of that philosophy. And if you do have questions, just post something in the comments. We do review, we do watch. So if you do have a comment, please just leave it in the comments below. We will review it and we'll get back to it and we'll create more content. We really want to be responsive to what people are saying and the questions people have. That's why we have this series called Real Talk, because we're just keeping it real as we can on a platform like YouTube. To really address those questions that people have around natural, around original medicine, and try to answer it in as simple and a basic a way without doing a disservice to the real cause of the idea. So Dr. Jim, thank you so much. You do that in such a wonderful way. We've reached the end of another Real Talk, and I think if you reach this far in the video, you would agree with me that Dr. Jim has certainly kept it real on this video. So really, I do hope that if you like the content, that you will like and subscribe to the channel, that we try and have a broad range of different content types. I hope you're enjoying this journey through the philosophy of original medicine. For me, it's really important to understand the core ideas of anything. There's a lot of misinformation out there in the world at the moment. I don't need to mention any specifics, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And really what we try to do is cut through that misinformation and give you the core ideas and really give you enough to start your own journey, to start your own search, to start your own research, to start your own journey of what is this for me? What's this? Is this something I need in my life? And that's all we want to do with this Real Talk series, is really keep it real from the perspective of original medicine. So Dr. Jim, thank you so much again for sharing with us. I hope that you'll join us again as the series continues. We're going to look in the future videos as we move forward at a much more practical level about the underlying causes of disease from the perspective of original medicine, and we'll spend a few videos going through that, so it'll be very practical. We've looked at the broad philosophy in this first series up to this point, and now we'll kind of start looking at a more practical level. So Dr. Jim, thank you so much. Everybody that's watched this far in the video, thank you to you. I hope that you'll join us for the rest of the series, whenever that is. If you have any comments or questions, use the comments below, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Oh, you're very welcome, and blessings to all.